Hey guys, welcome to a very special episode of Thor. We have reached 3-0. That's right, we're at our 30th episode of season 1. So I thought I'd commemorate this episode by doing one of my most favorite films on this earth, Back to the Future. And it's a really amazing film directed by Robert Zemeckis, starring Micheal J. and Christopher Lloyd, Lea Thompson, Tom Wilson. They're all phenomenal in this film, and it really has a special place in my heart. It's one of the films that inspired me to be a filmmaker. It has an amazing script, cast. Me and Z are going to be talking about it. It's a really big deal for the R.E.P Nights. It's one of our all-time favorite films, and it's always in our vault. We pretty much own almost every different version of this film. So just recently we got the 4K new transfer, so we've been checking those out, and stay tuned for another great episode of the House of R.E.P. Okay guys, welcome to Thor, episode 30. So we're talking about Back to the Future, the first film in the 3-part trilogy. We're celebrating the 35th anniversary of the film's release. We've just recently received the new 4K transfers of the film, so we got ourselves a new steelbook case which perfectly complements our old Blu-ray, which was from the previous anniversary. So that Blu-ray is really exciting. I'm joined by Z, my fellow R.E.P Knight. Now Z, this film, for us, yeah? It's one of our all-time favorite movies. We literally grew up with this film. And it's quite funny. We've got a very funny story about how we first saw the film. Like, Mum recorded it on a VCR recorder, and she missed the whole, first 10 minutes of the film. So do you want to tell people about that, how we first watched it? Because this film was made in 1985, so I wasn't born yet. You were only, 2 when the film, had actually come out in cinema. So we probably watched it in 1989, maybe 91, when it was on TV. So it must have been its first or second airing on TV. And if I remember correctly, we either watched it on ITV or Channel 4. They had the broadcast rights for the film. So the film was also very heavily edited as well. So the first time we saw it uncut, it was completely different to how we saw it the first time.
Yeah. Hey everyone, welcome to the House of R.E.P. This is Z speaking, and we're going to talk about this awesome film. It's been a staple of our life for so long, including the 2 sequels, Back to the Future 2 and Back to the Future Part 3. But we're going to focus on the first film today. And yeah, like you said, Ray, it was a really interesting experience to see the film, because when we first experienced this film, we kind of missed the first 10 minutes of it, essentially.
So we missed the amp scene, the clock
watched,
bits.
We watched a recording on VHS, and it only had the film from the Pine Mall scene where the introduction of the time machine, the Delorean, happens. So we never got to see like Ray said, the amplifier scene, his entrance to school, the Power of Love song. We kind of embraced that very late.
Yeah, the Power of Love didn't resonate with us because we missed the entire Power of Love kind of anchor points, and the bits where it sets up the whole kind of flow of the film and the kind of the beats. The way I remember it is that we had a very bad tracking error on the start of the bit where Biff is in the house lamenting about the car accident. So Marty comes in and the car's destroyed, and then he has that rough evening with little kind of mini debate with his father, look, Dad, why don't you talk to them? Why don't you why don't you not talk to them? I mean, talk to Biff and stuff. And he sees the Biff as this kind of leech on the family who bullies his father around, and then he thinks that, is he ever gonna basically overcome all these kind of shortcomings that his family have, from what he sees. And then being Doc's assistant, he kind of falls asleep, but then he forgets that he's got to go. So then that's really where the film kind of really started for me and you. and that was the first time we saw the DeLorean, and we were blown away because we love cars,
Yeah.
and seeing that futuristic looking car. It's quite funny because originally in like the original script, it was going to be like a fridge or some kind of massive kind of like box, kind of like a TARDIS kind of
Wasn't
thing.
it going to be something similar to Bill and Ted?
Yeah,
They
it was gonna
changed
be
it.
it was gonna be something like that. But what it was is that you would like have to carry it around on like a flatbed. And what's really funny is like Bob Gale and Robert Zemeckis, the director, they kind of invented this by kind of spitballing with each other and talking about like looking at old high school photos of. Like he saw like a high school photo of his dad. I think it was Bob Gale or Robert Zemeckis saw a high school photo of his dad, and he wondered if his dad and him would be best friends or friends at all if they were in like high school. So he was just thinking about that, and that's kind of where the kind of like the tail of the kind of spine of the film was made. And then originally Doc was like some kind of like dabbling kind of like professor, but also like a video pirate. So it was really funny. So he was like a video pirate. Marty was like a guy who would come and get like bootlegs from him or something, and then they do this, and he accidentally goes back in time. So it's a really interesting thing when you actually look at the really cool kind of production design. The film is kind of like a film. The film is like a time capsule, ironically. So it's a time film, which itself now is a time like a kind of like a study on the locking of film in time. And that's what I find about film. It's timeless and it's so universal. This film, showcases the best things about Americana and all the kinds of things that I love. Like I was always drawn to characters and heroic, films, adventure films like this. I really resonate with the character of Marty. He kind of reminds me of myself, a guy who just, wants to live a great life, wants to, do something because he wants the pinheads in his group to succeed. He loves music, he loves Jennifer. He enjoys basically his life, but he always feels that is he got, because people tell him his whole life that his parents didn't do nothing, so he's not gonna do nothing. The authoritarian figures in the film are very negative towards him, but the only kind of source of wisdom and kind of guidance is Doc, who everyone considers a crackpot. But it's the eccentric people, the people who are creative, the people who think outside of the box or on the far edge of the cusp, they're the ones who actually pioneer. Like the people who basically fly the plane, without the ejector seat, or the guys who basically, put the NOS on the end of the, put the NOS in the engine and say, listen, if we just like squirt a little fuel, this will go faster. So, like things like that. Like the electric guitar was made by a rebel who wanted to basically, get a different sound, push away from what had become the norm. Music is like that as well. Like, if you look at the rockabilly kind of Americana rock and roll style of 1955, and then 1985, the music, the rock music of the 80s, is a direct kind of rebellion of that other kind of rhythmic kind of, based in blues. This is like taking blues, but then, cranking it up all the way to 11, like Spinal Tap. So basically, we've had some amazing films in the 80s because people were just pushing the envelope with production design, special effects. Everything was in its infancy. What's really great about this film is that we actually saw the dawn of a lot of amazing technologies like the video camera, the Walkman. The Walkman. So Marty's got that classic Sony Walkman that is just such a legacy and prized collector's item now. And even his skateboard is the retro wideboard. The ones with the yellow wheels. I remember a lot of kids having that. I never really got into skateboarding. I was never really good at it. So I was more into inline skating and stuff. But I remember back in the 80s, everything had these kind of pastel, these kind of loud colors and stuff, and there was more color in the world. And then everything started becoming this kind of like, oh, let's leave everything white, or or a kind of like a gunmetal murdered out black. And black is great. Black goes with everything, but sometimes I love to bring color back, which is really cool. So it's a really good film. The casts are amazing. Marty's amazing. Michael J. Fox is just a phenomenal actor. And I remember basically that they started filming this film with Eric Schultz. So a lot of people, like, if they've ever seen trivia about this film, what happened was that Bob Gale and Robert Zemeckis were trying to pitch this film, and then I think it was the then president or something of Colombia, liked his film Used Cars, but Used Cars didn't do so well, so they were a bit reluctant to back the project. It wasn't until Robert Zemeckis had a hit with Romancing the Stone,
Oh yeah.
that kind of Indiana Jones style movie about Joan Wilder and Michael Douglas's character.
That's right.
That he had a little bit more kind of like confidence in the studio, because he got rejected like 40 times to all the submissions he did to studios. And we also have been rejected by some places too. But what I love about this film and the story about this film is that, you know, you never give up, because like, you know, one of the lines in the film is, if you put your mind to it, you can accomplish anything. And that's stuck with me, you know, throughout most of my life. You know, if you do put your mind to it, you can accomplish lots of stuff. People say no, and a lot of like the generation can be very pessimistic. You know, sometimes I see people writing, you know, on Reddit and other stuff like, you know, you're never gonna make it, or you're never gonna do this. You need to kind of wise up to that. No matter how hard you try, you still fail. But it's not about failing. It's about failing, learning from your failure, and keep going and living your life with whatever you want to do. I was told many times that I ain't never gonna make it as a filmmaker. But look at me. I made the Rep Nights. I made my first films with nothing but a small mobile phone and then a small video camera. And now I'm shooting on the latest Red formats, you know, doing stuff my own way. So even though we're indie and we haven't made it big yet, the Rep Nights are only a couple of steps away from becoming more recognizable. It's about, you know, you guys hearing this podcast, hearing me, and understanding why I want to be in film. I want to be in film to entertain, to basically, you know, open a new type of voice, get you guys to see the way I see the world. And there's stuff that basically, you know, like we creatives, like the way Doc Brown kind of slipped and got the idea for the flux capacitor, that kind of flash of genius. That happens to me often when it comes to film and stories and music. What will happen is that I will just daydream an entire movie, and then I have to write it down, or I'll dream it at night, or I'll start playing on my guitar. Yeah, so basically, like creatives, you know, sometimes people who aren't really too creative, they kind of sometimes look at you like, you know, okay, you're a little bit outside of what we think is this kind of status quo norm. And I want to basically rebel against that. I think that that's the wrong kind of way of thinking, because things wouldn't be invented if the television wouldn't be invented. You know, as humans, we do stuff when we push ourselves and when we work together. So film is colorless, you know, it's basically universal. And that's what I love about it. You know, I was basically born here, but, you know, I've been so influenced by Americana and culture, and then the time I've spent in America has really made me, you know, like, and, you know, the other stuff, you know, my upbringing, you know, my culture, it's really made me amalgamation of a lot of things in the world. I've read, I've studied, I try to enrich myself with so many different points of view and so many different cultures, and you know, it enriches my life. It doesn't close me off to a sort of like, you know, sort of one way kind of insular way of thinking about people. At the end of the day, we're all humans, we all live and die, and in my lifetime, what I want to do with you guys with the Rep Nights is create great films, create great stuff, and basically make magic. And that's really what this film accomplishes. It's a fantastic film, and it leaves behind a great legacy about, number one, you know, family, you know, is great. Two, if you mess things up, you can still fix things. Two, it's about trying to pioneer and kind of move forward. So these are the kind of messages I get from the film. It's not some kind of snot-nosed punk who thinks that the world owes him. He actually tries, you know, like Marty is a character who actually tries to do stuff. He's never, there's only one point where he thinks he does something selfish, and that creates the dark timeline in the second Back to the Future. But he was still trying to do that because he just wanted a better life for himself, because of money and the way in which, you know, you needed to have, you know, like more resources and more stuff. He just wanted to be able to take care of everyone, you know, by learning those sports statistics. But then Biff completely uses it in the most evil and heinous way. So it shows that, you know, like tools can be used for good and bad. So yeah, like, it's really interesting. The film's really great. I mean, the production design is fantastic. I love the DeLorean, the way it looks. Hats off to the production crew. Like the set builders and the prop masters of this film, because the DeLorean's got this signature to it, and it's just timeless. Like those time dilation circuits, the flux capacitor, the retro readout. The only thing I find weird is the kind of calculator-based kind of input for the stuff. But I think Doc just made it really simple.
The technology at that
But I'm
time.
thinking that if he needed to call back stuff, it would be very difficult for him. And he's made it as light as possible, I guess, the DeLorean, because if he put like a massive computer in it, it would be so heavy. So he's using some kind of binary based kind of simple code where you'll just tap in like 0, 1, 10, 1985, and then that's the first, it's locked in that kind of buffer. So he's got like just a couple of kind of calculator or kind of little computer chips that just register that information. It's funny though, because like, I didn't notice stuff in the original tape that I'm only just noticing now on the Blu-ray and like repeat viewings over the years. Like there's a massive compass in the car. Like and it's one of those kind of geometric compasses in a sphere. Like which kind of like roll around when the car's moving. So that's really interesting. And generally, like if you look at the car's kind of layout, it really makes the DeLorean look a lot more faster and beefier. Because you were talking about this earlier with me, weren't you?
I think what Robert Zemeckis has done is that he's created a really nice, if you look at it carefully, the film, the introduction of this opening scene focuses on time, all the analog clocks. Then we get lots of close-ups of like the Pine Moors LED sign that's saying the time. Then the clock, and then his watches. His watch doesn't work. His watch sometimes doesn't work. The Doc and Einstein have their stopwatches when they're like testing time.
His control watch,
there's a good overall reference to time and how time plays a big part in the narrative of the film.
The reveal of the DeLorean's amazing too, isn't it?
I think that's
the
a
truck
great sequence.
opens up, because for that's the first time we ever saw it, and it's very symbolic for us. Really, really ignited a kind of creative fire in us to create, something like this. I felt something inside. I was like, I want to have this car, I wish this was happening to me. And that's kind of amazing about film. I've always loved the DeLorean's rear lights. They're always cool, but all the kind of,
it was nice, all the special effects department,
all the ancillary stuff they did on the car just filled it in and it made it look so much better, because the real DeLorean doesn't have those kind of vents that kind of look double.
I think some
kind
people
of like
are
spoilers.
under the misconception that you can buy a DeLorean. Obviously now there are huge companies and fantastic people who can make replica kit cars of the DeLorean.
You can actually now buy DeLoreans from a sort of semi-resurrected brand. So basically, I remember reading that there's electric versions of DeLoreans you can buy, and there's also 3D printed parts for people who already own DeLoreans.
That's right,
So they can actually repair their cars if there's anything wrong with them. And then the Back to the Future DeLorean has been replicated a few times, and one of the original cars from the film was restored in the last anniversary edition of the film's release. So when it came out on Blu-ray, they did a special where they restored it. It was very similar to when they restored the Ghostbusters vehicle. So what they did is that there was a special restoration company. I think what they've done is they've maintained a lot of film vehicles. So they've maintained stuff like, the Batmobiles and stuff. So so they basically like repair them and make kind of Dopplers, or duplicates for shows, and you want to take this thing on the road.
I think this is the coolest feature when we first saw the film, was that Doc could control the car.
That bit was amazing.
It was like a massive remote control car. So I was like,
I loved it.
Cool
that was
toy.
So cool.
I was like, how's he driving the car himself?
He had some kind of TCM radio control kind of thing, but he beefed it up, man. He had like a handbrake on it. He had all these fresh Goodyear tires on the DeLorean. Oh my god, man. And they threw up a lot of nice smoke, so when the lights of the car,
it's like shiny.
It's really shiny. You can see the beams, the actual beams of the car. One of my favorite bits, and a very iconic bit, is when he's like testing the time machine for the first time, and they're standing
with the
there.
dog in it.
Yeah, so Einstein's inside the car, and then he's basically burning out the vehicle, getting it, up to the acceleration he wants. And then he releases the handbrake, and then the car's coming, and then Marty tries to, get out the way. And that bit's so funny, and he's looking at Marty. The look he gives Marty is so funny, but he's like, why are you stepping away? That bit is so hilarious. And I love it. I mean, some of the, like the energy that Mike brought to the set, yeah? So like when Micheal J. Fox was there and they replaced Eric Schultz, because I remember Tom Wilson and Lea Thompson saying that they didn't get along with Eric Schultz so well. Like even Tom Wilson had a little bit of a physical kind of problem with him because he was a little too kind of aggressive and method in his acting for the fight bits. So he was getting ready to like really shove him back and stuff, but then production halted because they originally wanted Micheal J. Fox, but he was basically tied into his contract with Family Ties. And
no pun intended.
Yeah, so basically what happened is the script was given to like the showrunners, but they didn't give it to him. They just didn't want to let him go. Because Family Ties at that time was like the Friends of like, yesteryear, like, these top kind of sitcoms. It was doing really well, and they just didn't want to let go of him. So basically they ended up like having Eric for a while, but everyone realized, and this is after Spielberg also helped Zemeckis kind of, we all know Spielberg is one of the most legendary directors in film. And when he had Amblin, he really brought the project into turnaround and helped basically get it around. And then Columbia sold it off to Universal. They kind of swapped films. So basically, Spielberg had some kind of a beef with one of the kind of studio heads at Columbia because they passed on E.T. or something, or they kind of like said that it would never be great. So he had like a little bit like of a beef with them, and I could understand that would be why, like, look, I've made it now, but I don't want to work with this guy professionally because he mocked me when I was a nobody. So basically Robert Zemeckis, is obviously like a protege of Spielberg, and saw Spielberg sort of as a mentor figure, and because he had a lot of clout, he was able to get this thing finally made with Universal. And I think this is one of Universal's most successful franchises.
Oh yeah.
And they're
definitely.
it really put Universal on the map. And this is well before Fast and Furious is the behemoth that they had. I mean, they've made some amazing films over the years, like Universal, MGM, 20th Century Fox. These are some of my favorite studios that I would love to work for. And it would be brilliant to work with Universal. They're like a really, really, really good brand, really good studio. So so the film, the one kind of weird kind of continuity error though with the film is that when the DeLorean goes back in time the first few times, it's like freezing cold.
Yeah.
When it comes back,
and it kind of vents some.
Yeah, and it has to
smoke.
like sort of. It takes a lot of energy for the DeLorean to work. Later on, as the film kind of like the franchise progresses, that's kind of dropped.
Yeah,
or I guess the car
thaw the ice
kind of gets used to it or something. Maybe the car needed to get used to being kind of displaced through time or something.
Well, it's funny, isn't it?
Yeah.
It does two things. It generates fire when it leaves.
Yeah.
And then it generates ice when it comes back.
And that neon glow is amazing too.
Yeah, I
when the
love
car
that. The
lights
special
up.
effects, the VFX and stuff are really cool.
It was funny because when they screened the film for the first time, it had no special effects, but still got like, people, saying that this is one of the best films. So they knew it was going to open big. But replacing Eric Schultz, delayed the film and added an extra $4 million in reshoots. Wow. So this is like this was the first film that I ever read that had that kind of reshoot stuff going on that I was aware of. Like over time. Like I used to think that films were shot kind of like in linear order and they needed very little work. As I got better as a filmmaker, I realized that people do go back to do pickups, go back to do things to kind of like, pad the film and think of things that they missed on that day.
Yeah.
But sometimes when I do shorts, I try to plan it out so much because I'm on such a tight budget and tight schedule that I only have pretty much one chance to get it right. It's almost like a luxury when you're on a feature film because you can actually take whole days to just do one scene and craft stuff at a very high level. So when the studio power is there, when the budget power is there, you can really play. You can really make some great stuff. Yeah.
I also like Micheal J. Fox and Christopher Lloyd's chemistry. I think they work really well off each
It's a
other.
timeless chemistry. You know,
Yeah.
this film just never ages for me. You know, I know some of the stuff might seem a bit dated, but it's the, you know, the heart of the story. It's just so amazing. It's just really good. I mean, he has a father figure in Doc and with his dad, but he resonates so much with Doc. There's just like this great kind of like father-son relationship with him. You know, like Doc never had a family
Yeah.
until the third one, but you know he never thought he'd have one. But he had a son in Marty, so technically, in a way, he sees Marty as his kind of eldest kind of son. You know what I mean? Like his adoptive son. I'm sure if anything ever happened to the McFlys, yeah, Doc Brown would just adopt him. You know, but you know Marty becomes his own man, which is really good too. You know, he becomes very independent.
Yeah, he goes through a progression.
Yeah, he goes through a great progression where, you know, his problem has always been that one where, you know, he sees himself as a kind of like a failure and a coward. And if anyone calls him out on that because of his father's kind of like, you know, original shortcomings in the original timeline, his dad was quite a coward. You know, he wouldn't stand up to people. So that affected Marty. And because Marty's personality and everything he is doesn't change, it just kind of organically grows throughout the movie. He's different. You know, he's just like, you know, he's the same person, but then he grows into the man, whereas everyone else has changed around him because of the timeline changes. So his dad is actually brave and has everything that makes Marty who he is. You know, in the new timeline, what I call the corrected timeline. You know, where his dad is an author and he's like, you know, a great supportive father, and his mother is still, you know, like very healthy and they're very much in love still. So yeah, it's like it's a really great. I mean, some of the stuff hasn't aged well, like the Libyan scene with the kind of damn Soviet gun. You know, like it has some of those, but I think that's kind of like, you know, part of, you know, why it's kind of captured in time, because those things were quite contentious. You know, like they are still. You know, we still don't have peace in the Middle East and stuff, and you know, it's a shame. The one thing I really am salty about is that we don't have any flying cars or hoverboards still, and you know, like all
Where's
those
the
kind
flying
of.
cars?
I want those power laces, man. You know, like I still want all that kind of stuff. So
That's right.
I hope.
But there's a lot of. That's what's good about Back to the Future. It has a lot of good pop culture references about, you know, American culture. We've got like, you know, diners, burgers, milkshakes, and
the Americana kind of rockabilly
guitar,
thing is great.
rock and roll music.
Yeah,
all that kind of plays into the kind of feeling and the kind of niche of Back to the Future as a film. And then on top of that, you've got this lovely sci-fi element that adds the time travel and makes it a whole new level of storytelling.
Yeah.
I don't think there was anything quite like this at the time.
No, it was very original, and that's
This
what
was like
good
in the
about
mid
it.
'80s.
You know, like what I find that's kind of getting a bit stale is constantly remaking something.
Yeah.
You can kind of remake Superman like a gazillion times, yeah, kind of, but that's also getting kind of stale, because how many times are we going to see that he's Kal-El? He came from like, you know, the Krypton. Like pretty much every generation knows the fable of Superman. You know, there's other places that you can go with Superman, like making him older and more of a teacher for like maybe a new generation of heroes or something, you know, or maybe like focus more on Connor Kent and the new kind of characters from that new future DC, you know, so
I think also that it's funny that they chose the DeLorean, because they kind of gave the company an even higher profile.
That's
even
true.
though they didn't want
That's
that.
true.
They weren't aiming for that.
I think, what were they trying to get? I have no idea. Like, I really don't know what type of car or what kind of offer they put out, but John DeLorean's forever thankful for them. He's actually sent them personally a letter saying that you really made DeLorean what it is today.
Yeah,
because,
the DeLorean Motor Company.
Yeah, because of featuring it in the movie. So that's amazing. And then, you know, also yeah, just it's really really good. It's a really, like, I love the bit where he's running away from the Libyans. That bit's cut nicely. You know, the sense of speed, it really makes the DeLorean look really fast, and you know there's some kind of excitement there. And that RPG looked like some mammoth thing. He just pulls out a giant RPG-7 or something.
All Call of Duty.
Yeah, this is all. Yeah, I was like, what is that thing?
What is that thing?
And then like the original cut, he goes Libya's. Let's see if he could do 90 in that sort of ITV cut.
Tell us about the differences between the silly TV cuts and
the TV
Blu-ray
cuts have a lot of the cursing taken away.
Okay.
Yeah, and also it's available on Amazon Prime right now, and the transfer is very good. It's based on the Blu-ray, so I was looking recently at the new Zavi Blu-ray I have, and it's a little bit more sort of preserved like the original film, so there's still noticeable grain and artifacting compared to the actual Amazon Prime, the one on Amazon Prime seems like a slightly more treated version of the film where they've denoised it, and it looks very good. Like, I'm very impressed by the Amazon transfer, and I feel that transfer is the original Blu-ray transfer that I have in the tin, whereas the 4K transfer, I haven't been able to dig deep into that one, but I'm sure the 4K transfer is very similar to the original Blu-ray transfer, but the backup Blu-ray that they've given us, when we're looking at it on the 4K reference TV that we have, we're looking at it, it has noticeable artifacting grain. I don't know if that's intentional, or if I'm just seeing that, on the Blu-ray. It's a strange thing, but the film's great nonetheless. It's very clear. I mean, I'm happy to see the film in this much better quality, because I remember watching it on VHS where it was like really dark and
horrible.
Like, horrible
Tracking
looking
problems.
And it had like noise and damage on the tape. I remember
it was 4:3.
Yeah, and I remember my uncle just teaching me to fix it and stuff. So because he was in hi-fi and TV repair, I would learn from him, how to wind the tape back up, or sellotape it if I had cut the tape, or recutting the tape. So I'd lose pieces of the film sometimes. I would basically watch it so much that it really wore out. It wore down, and then I bought it on VHS. Then I got the DVD box set of it. Then when the anniversary came and it came out on Blu-ray for the first time, I picked that up, and now I've got the 4K transfer to celebrate the 35th anniversary. So I wonder if it will come in hologram form in the future. When I'm an old man, I don't know. You get what I mean?
That's that self-projection version.
Yeah, but it's really good. I mean, the prop design's great. When he ends up in 1955, they had to bring out all those retro vehicles.
Yes, lovely.
They had to probably source them from all these
But they did the Hill Valley sets. That's like a studio backlot, isn't it?
That's what it feels like. It feels like it's Universal Studio backlot.
Yeah.
And what they've done is they've built the city around it. Thereby, they could control the budget and also, make sure it was all the shots they could film in peace.
It's controlled.
It's all controlled. And I like that sometimes. Sometimes backlot filming has its benefits. If you can be smart about it, it's really good. So the old couple, they're funny. We were just thinking about that, how that old couple panic when they see him in his radioactive suit. They probably think he's some kind of alien because Peabody, his kid, triggers Peabody so badly that old man Peabody that Doc was talking about starts shooting the crap out of Marty. So that's quite funny. Yeah, so it's really good. It's a great film. It's a great film. Everything's really fun about it. I mean, I love the first one. My favorite one personally, I don't know about you, bro, but my favorite one is the second one, because you get to see the DeLorean fly, and I loved all the future stuff. Beat It and all the kind of stuff, and little Elijah Wood's in that one as well. So that's quite funny as well. He's like a baby, but all the stuff in the second film's wicked too, and I love that, the dark future, then having to go back on it touches on the first one. Originally this film was never conceived to have a sequel, right? It's supposed to be completely close-ended. So the bit with Jennifer, they kind of wrote themselves into kind of like a corner, by having Jennifer come with them, and then when they started writing the second film, they were like, what can we do with Jennifer? We've written this as a story about Marty. Yeah. And a lot of people would say, oh, well, you could have done more, to kind of support the female characters and make them stronger. But this film wasn't made from that point of view. It was made from Marty's point of view. Basically, it's a story about Marty's journey. That's why this film you could remake it with like a lady, or you could remake it with like a different guy as Marty, and still kind of have the story of family and stuff. But Bob Gale and Robert Zemeckis says we will never remake it, and I think I agree with that, because this is a film that's frozen in time.
Yeah, it's got like historical significance.
Don't mess around with it. Don't
film.
remake it. Don't touch it. You've remade so many things and kind of messed them up. Like Disney are kind of having a kind of hit and miss with these live action remakes, and they're kind of not really working as well as the cartoons. So I don't know. I just don't agree with that. I don't agree with a lot of remakes. I can understand some remakes, like, for instance, special effects get better, so you can make Superman fly. But in Man of Steel, some of the flying scenes look like plasticine kind of clay and really budget CGI. So it's not the best. It could have been a lot better. Even some of the original stuff in the Donner film sometimes feels better. The wire stuff. And compared to the CGI double.
That's what I think what's good about Back to the Future is that as soon as Marty comes back to 1955, you can see the production quality and the production value. There's no silly CGI. There's all real people in suits and costumes.
Yeah.
Real vehicles from that era. Authentic
physical,
looking posters.
Authentic. That's the right term.
Authentic looking places. Yeah. And it's kind of set. They chose a specific time, 1955, like literally like 10 to 12 years after the Second World War.
So it's the baby boomer era.
So it's a very particular era they chose. Because
we're considered, what's quite funny? We're considered Gen Y, not Gen X.
Okay.
So because we were born in like 86, we're considered Generation Y. Whereas the recent kids, who have, come in the world, they're considered Generation Z. So they've given this kind of like, like moniker to our generation. And they consider us the lost generation. Some people, it's very interesting because the baby boomers, the way in which the world has kind of flown, it's sort of benefited them a lot, and they've been able to basically they were able to get mortgages easily. They had full careers, and other stuff like that. And a lot of our generation are suffering from a lack of housing, a lack of worthwhile employment, that actually leads somewhere. Like some people just go from job to job now, in limited contracts and things like that. Oh, the diner scene. I wanted to talk about yes, let's talk about a villain, the Biff Tannen. Played by the incredibly great actor and comedian Thomas F. Wilson. He's amazing. So
we love you, Tom Wilson.
Tom, you're great, man, and your stand-up was really good too. I saw stand-up special with him in it. It was very good. And basically, he loved being Biff, but he always gets asked lots of questions about the character. So he made a song about it, which is quite funny. So if anyone ever asks him, he just sings a song. And Billy Zane's in the film. So Billy Zane basically
spot and miss it.
Yeah, he's kind of like one of the heavies, he's one of Biff's gang. And then that other kid 3D is quite funny too. He just wears the 3D glasses and stuff. And I love Biff's car. It looks like Gus's car from Crazy Taxi. You get what I mean? Crazy Taxi is one of my all-time favorite games. I had like one of the the largest records on that. On that Crazy Taxi. I played that game like crazy. I had one of the highest scores. I had like a million on it or something, and I sent it into CBG.
But again, even you can say that again about the significance of American pop culture, the cars, the food.
Those cars were amazing back then. They were big and heavy, but they had a lot of power. Absolutely. And they were like the way they were crafted was with a little bit more love,
Yeah, because Biff has like a black Ford.
What is it?
Convertible. I don't know what model it is, but it's a very cool looking car. It's a very iconic car, almost as much as the DeLorean. In terms of
it is like as a villain's car, it's really cool. Like Griff's got like a slightly, I think he's got a Cabriolet BMW like 3 Series or 5 Series.
I think it's like a 6 Series.
6 Series or something, that they've kind of heavily modified to make it look like some kind of future hover car, because he smashes the light, and I remember it's a BMW from the light. But Griff is a good character too, him being his kind of bionic psycho grandson, they're like almost genetic kind of inherited lookalikes. So that's quite interesting. It's the same thing with Marty too. His kid looks like him. I always thought that would happen to me. Like I'd have a kid who looked exactly like me. Maybe one day. You know,
Yeah.
you never know.
Also, there's a lot of quite cheeky in the dialogue of the film and the narrative. There's a lot of foreshadowing that happens in the film,
And a lot of innuendo that we didn't pick up on when we were kids.
Yeah.
Like the peeping Tom bit with the Wonder Bra, like he's basically trying to get
Like
his
George is
fix
climbing the
because
tree.
George is sexually repressed and stuff. So he's trying to see a chick when she's like undressed, and then he gets knocked out by the car. You know, the sexual kind of advances by Lea Thompson. You know, the kind of horny teenager kind of thing. You know, so like it's a bit weird because when I was young, I never I couldn't really understand that mother thing. You know, the kind of them tapping on that incestuous
Yeah.
thing with the mum fancying him. It's only a bit later that I found it a little bit more weird. You know, like
Well,
that.
the dog kind of explains it to Marty
Yeah,
in a way.
because she's like super infatuated with him, but then when she kisses him, she thinks she's kissing her brother, which is a kind of interesting thing too. Like, you know, they didn't write themselves into a kind of weird hole when they wrote that. They wrote it specifically in the intent that, you know, it would end up the way it was, that it would be wrong.
Yes.
You know, and stuff. And he knew it and she knew it and stuff, but she was just I had to work through that process. Lea Thompson is a very phenomenal actress. She's, you know, like a very, 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 very good. And I remember she had some problems with Eric Schultz too. Apparently, like he was, like I remember reading somewhere that he was like flirting with her in between takes. So he was a method actor. What he would do is he would turn up on set in his Marty clothes. And then he would basically tell the crew, just call me Marty. Don't call me Eric.
Proper method.
And then he wouldn't even eat with the crew. That's what Lea said. He wouldn't eat with the crew, just go to his trailer and eat. So he was like very, very, very method. Almost to the point of like, you know, I would say cringy, you know, or like irritating. And then like a lot of people, he rubbed a lot of people the wrong way. So they were kind of fed up with him. But at that point, like there was a point where they knew he had been fired, but they kept shooting anyway. So what they were trying to do is to save film. They were just shooting doc, you know, like angles with doc that they could use in the edit.
Oh,
you know,
okay.
so there's like I think Eric's hand survives in one of the cuts, like when Biff is fighting or it grabbing, like Biff getting grabbed or something. It's Eric's hand for 1 second, and you'll see Eric for like a second in the DeLorean when the Libyans are chasing him.
Right.
And that's the extent of where Eric exists in the actual final print of the film. And also, apparently, Lea got really upset when Eric got fired because he was fully paid, by the way. So he got fully paid. He got like a pay-or-play kind of contract, and then they had to basically release him so that he could carry on doing what he was doing and then bring Micheal J. Fox in. But this was an arduous shoot for Micheal J. Fox because he was filming Family Ties during the day. Then he would go and shoot at night the film.
Right.
And then he would be so tired that like Teamsters would take him to his bed. They would like carry him literally to his bed because by that time he was sleeping in between takes, and he would sometimes go on the Family Ties set and be looking for like the video camera prop that he needed for the scene, and then people had to remind him that he's on Family Ties, not on Back to the Future. So he would get kind of confused and like, you know, like really tired, you know, like in between the stuff, and that really rattled him a lot. And, you know, bless him, he's such an amazing actor who got stricken by that, you know, awful ailment of Parkinson's. But, you know, he's fighting it. You know, he's overcome it up to a point where, you know, he's active and living, and, you know, his foundation and charity, you know, to bring awareness more to Parkinson's and these neurological diseases is very commendable. And, you know, in the future, when I get a little bit higher up and I have more resources, I'm going to strive to keep, you know, pushing for us to concentrate more on helping each other as humans and less about destroying things. You know, we need to kind of grow up as a human race and, you know, really kind of focus more on taming the stars and getting out there in the universe. It's a really big place, you know? We shouldn't really be like fighting over like borders and lines, you know, lines in the ground. There's
another two elements in the scene where Marty meets Lorraine's parents and they're having dinner.
Yeah.
Obviously, the first one is his uncle Joey, who's a little child in the playpen.
Yeah.
But obviously, he's saying, "Get used to these bars, kid." That's obviously a foreshadowing of his uncle when he's grown up as a convict, and also the TV show that they're watching on the TV set is the same TV show that his dad's watching on the rerun.
Yeah. Yeah, because for him it's a rerun, but for them it's the first time they've ever seen it. And also TVs were like relatively new, so when he says that we have two TVs, that's a different type of TV that was made after, when the Asian market got into it and started making TVs that were a lot cheaper and easier to access, so they became more mainstream. Back then you had to be like, it was quite a big thing to have a television in your home in 1955, and they were like black and white, very noisy, huge CRT style monitors with aerials kind of built into the top that would fully extend to pick up the frequency of the transmission. So it was very infantile in its technology, but still groundbreaking for its time. People could finally sit and watch something while they were eating dinner, but also that's a bit of a negative because, like, nowadays we're all got our noses in our phones and we're not talking to our own loved ones who are literally right next to us. We're texting each other going, yo, can you bring me up like a can of Coke, or can you do this? And we're literally right next to each other. So instead of like going down and telling people, yo, let's do something, we're just texting each other. We're kind of, like nowadays, what's really funny? Like people will text me, go, yo, can I call you? And they confirm with me that they want to call me before they call me. Back in the day, people used to call us, and we used to remember everyone's numbers.
Yeah.
So I would know my best friend's number off by heart, and then I call their parents and go, hey, yeah, can I talk to him? Is he gonna come round? Is he still coming? So back in the day, it was a lot different. You would communicate more, and the communications just changed. Doc's house is really nice. He has a lot of. This is his house, obviously, before it burns down from his experiments, and then he sells off most of the land to fund the time machine. I'm not sure if in the corrected timeline he actually manages to keep the home, or he still sells it, because we get to see the home in Back to the Future 1, and then we see the home again in Back to the Future 3 at the start, when he takes Doc home after Doc faints in the second film's finale. So that machine is really weird, the kind of mind-reading machine. That's an amazing prop as well. With his glowing kind of like tungsten looking kind of glow rods and that weird frame on his head. He's trying to build some kind of mind reading machine, but it doesn't work, so it's a total flop. And he kind of doesn't believe Marty the first time he meets him. He thinks he's some sailor, which is the running gag. I mean, that's one of the first pieces of the script that remained, throughout. It was always the constant thing that, they thought that, a Gillett kind of, puffer jacket, which was very popular for the time, was like, people would mistake a person for a life preserver. So that's quite funny. So it's really good. Like Christopher Lloyd's acting as young Doc is really good, because there's a slight different kind of nuance in the way he performs it. He performs it with a little bit more like sort of madness and youthful energy. Whereas when he's older Doc's a little bit more kind of calmer as well. Like later, when he's talking to Marty, they're very chill. Their relationship is so chill when he's with older Doc. So it's really cool. It's really, really good. But then, another kind of interesting continuity thing happens as well. They de-age Christopher Lloyd in a very kind of interesting way. When he goes in Back to the Future 2, he pretends to be old, but he's wearing a disguise.
Yeah.
So what he's done is he's basically gone to a rejuvenation clinic to look younger, so that he doesn't have to wear the prosthesis. And that kind of saved them time. So he has less time in the chair and more time to perform, during shots. All the night shots are shot very well too. There's very little grain. I've seen a lot of films that have shot at night, and then basically they look very grainy. Like the lenses are trying to do their best.
Yeah.
The camera's trying to do its best, but these were old film cameras. They were wide as they can be. These kind of like old anamorphic Zeiss lenses that they were probably using. Probably had a t-stop of like maybe 1.2, and they were very fast. But they did have to throw up some kind of RE kind of, floodlight, key light to kind of get that. Get it to look brighter, make it look like it was like some house lights.
This was the first film we saw with Christopher Lloyd in it, isn't it? And then we started to see other films.
For us, yeah.
He didn't do Addams Family. Did he do Addams Family before this or after this?
No, after. Definitely okay. After, because I remember seeing him in that after. But also, I didn't recognize him as the evil judge when I first saw Who Framed Roger Rabbit.
Oh yeah,
because
yeah,
that's a follow up to
iconic
this.
role, yeah.
So that's a follow up. So basically, Robert Zemeckis directed that too. So he had re-teamed with Christopher Lloyd. So by that time, this film had become hot. They had already started filming that film, and that's an amazing film too. I can't wait to do a House of Rep on that. That's one of my all-time favorite films. And may Bob Hoskins rest in peace. He was an amazing actor. He was a very, very good actor. And another great thing about this film is that it introduced me to Eddie Van Halen's music.
Oh yeah.
Because when he plays Eddie's tune Out the Window, it was actually made for the Wild Ones.
Yeah. What bit is that?
It's the bit basically where I think it's Chris Penn. So Sean Penn's brother is in that film, and he's perving on his girlfriend. It's like
what bit is it in this film?
Oh, it's basically the bit where he dresses up in the radioactive suit to try and fool his dad into going after Lorraine. So what happens is that he goes, "Silence, Earthling. My name is Darth Vader. I'm an international. I'm an intergalactic. I was about to say international. I'm an intergalactic citizen from Vulcan or something like that. Yeah. So it's so funny. I'm an intergalactic alien from the planet Vulcan or something. It's really funny. So he merges the two kind of franchises together, and what's really cool is the way he controls the Walkman, and that wicked whammy bar, like raid on the riff, and the way he goes down the riff, it's so epic. That's Out the Window. So that tune was specifically designed for the Wild Ones soundtrack, and they sampled it. I think Wild Ones is actually a Universal film, which is why they were able to do that. They were able to just sample the rights.
Also, it's kind of like that scene is a little bit inspired for like Guardians as well, with Star-Lord's character.
Yeah, like Star-Lord is heavily that's a homage to that, I think, intentionally by James Gunn.
Yeah.
Because he's also an orphan child. Instead, he's sort of like orphaned in space.
Yes.
And he was plucked from that time period, whereas Marty's kind of plucked from his time period, but he travels through time. So Star-Lord's very much like that, like very much a similar kind of hero who's a child of that time. So music is very important to them. To be able to carry around a portable jukebox was a very innovative thing. Now we've got pretty much everything on our phones, so we have like little like tricorder like supercomputers in our hands. Absolutely, which are calculators, cameras, stopwatches, email. It's a personal computer, a video player, a music player. These things do everything, and they're amazing innovations. Going back to the film, I really love the bit where Marty shows courage and he trips Biff. When he's helping, this is like right after the bit when he's prepped his dad. He's like bucked his dad up to talk to Lorraine. So he gets a feeling like George of how it is to kind of talk to Lorraine for a prolonged time. He's built up a bit of confidence. He's written some words down that Marty's given him, but it all gets ruined by Biff's arrival. So Biff is like, McFly, what are you doing in here?
Antagonist.
Yeah, so he comes to kind of ruin the whole thing. But the chase is wicked, the skateboard chase. I love the way they've kind of planned it out, because they've already pre-planned the square, like the set. So this is like a Universal lot, most likely. And then what's happened is that he steals like a sort of like a box cart kind of sort of toy from this kid. So like it was a different type of style that the kids would do, like like the modern day scooters that kids are using nowadays. This kid was using like a box scooter that he had made like out of an apple cart and like a piece of wood with the wheels. And then basically Marty becomes this badass because he steals a skateboard, and no one's ever seen a skateboard before. So he's like some wizard. Like everyone's like, this guy is so cool. You can actually see the stuntman like chasing Marty down when he's like turning, and and you can also see that the stuntman's kind of taller than Michael J. Fox a bit. So like you have to kind of sort of like feign a bit of belief there, but it's still a wonderful chase. Like the way that they've mapped it out, they kind of try and throw bottles at him and different things.
If you look at it now, it's a bit more graphic. Like it's a bit more violent.
Yeah, because again, we're seeing the uncut version of it. So the bottle scenes, the profanity, the bit when they say shit, they hold it for a lot longer. It's a little less like it's a little less stronger in the television cut of the film.
Yeah.
The enhancements are really good. So if you have a HDR TV and you're watching the 4K Blu-ray or you're watching the 1080p Blu-ray, the colors are going to look really good and everything looks really crisp. There's very little film grain on the movie itself. Looking at the movie, like if I remember correctly, it's not anamorphic. The way they shot this full frame. So it's very tall, the movie. so it doesn't have the cinema letterboxing on it. Maybe that was an intentional choice by them to, like, for when they're going into TV syndication, and maybe because of, like, originally when they shot this film, they were thinking that this was going to be on a pan and scan kind of Betacam or VHS release.
So definitely an inferior format.
So because of that, they probably made the film taller on purpose. But that's kind of like the hard thing about the movie, because there was something I remember a lot of the fan base in America were upset about, because when originally the movie came out on DVD, it was in that tall format, and people were like, look, we want it in anamorphic. So there was a subsequent anamorphic release of the film, which was kind of like an artificial kind of like sort of tweak to the film, but it's not the natural version of it. Because I remember Bob Gale like issuing a press release or something telling people that we never shot it anamorphic, so it's shot on full frame lenses. So yeah, I don't think that really distracts from the movie's quality. It's still fantastic. I love the models that Doc makes. Like talking about the models, he makes all these really he calls them really crude models. But whoever the model maker was did a really good job at making it look like Doc has a great pastime making models. Maybe as a child he made a lot of like models and, kept in like his little room, playing around with models, building rocket ships and things like that. I would love to see Doc in his early years as a kid, like maybe going on some adventure or something. But if you're gonna do anything with the franchise, you should just go like to Doc's early years or something, like in college or something silly. But there's really not much you can do with Back to the Future without messing it up. So I think personally, in my opinion, and I think you agree with me, bro, that they should be kind of left alone. The franchise should be left alone to just be enjoyed and preserved as like film history. This is a beautiful film. I hope one day that I make something great like this, and it's preserved through the echelons of time, because that's what this film is.
It's a pop culture icon.
Yeah, it spawned a massive franchise. And not only do we have the franchise itself being like a really big deal, it's come out on VHS, Laserdisc, Betacam, VCD, like almost every format imaginable, and just recently has it come out again on 4K Blu-ray, and that's what this kind of celebratory House of Rep episode is about, because we're celebrating the anniversary of one of our most beloved franchises and celebrating the release of it on 4K. And I have to say that the 4K transfer is wonderful. The original 1080p transfers are wonderful. So I've got the original 25th anniversary tin, I've got the new box set, and both transfers, I'm happy to say, are the same. So they haven't diminished the original Blu-ray. So even if you have just a HD television, you're still going to get a great experience with the normal Blu-ray. The sound is amazing, so you've got the great kind of Dolby on it, you've got the different kinds of codecs, you've got great director's commentary, you've got awesome behind the scenes, including the ride. So that's something that I never got to experience. I was never able to go to
the ride was cool.
I was never able to go to Universal Studios and try the ride out, but apparently the ride was on a kind of mechanized gimbal, kind of like those hydraulic kind of chairs, that kind of smoke effects, water effects and things. And then Biff steals the time machine, so there's a second time machine that Doc takes, like a backup time machine. It's really strange. I would say that this is kind of like an alternate reality to ride. It's
like
not
a
really
non-canonical story.
Yeah, so most of the stuff that they've released subsequently are non-canon. So even the Telltale game, I played the first episode of it and I thought it was really fun, but I wasn't able to carry on. It's very much like, it was a really good point and click game. One of my favorite games of all time was Broken Sword. So Broken Sword was like a really good point and click game that I played on the PlayStation. So when Z picked up the original grey PlayStation, he had like this triple pack that gave him like an enhanced version of Road Rash. He had Broken Sword, and I think it was The Mist. It was another kind of point and click game, but that game was boring. That game was really nice looking, but I found The Mist quite boring. It was like a kind of sort of like solitary adventure title.
Kind of pre-rendered graphics.
With pre-rendered graphics. I didn't find that as exciting, as
Broken Sword.
Broken Sword had very good voice acting. And I've always been a fan of Broken Sword. If I could make a Broken Sword film, I probably would. I like the Shadow of the Templars. I like, like Columbo, Diagnosis Murder, kind of Murder, She Wrote kind of shows. And it's really good. Yeah, so it's really awesome. So, yeah.
So it spawned a lot of good pop culture. Like, it's had a lot of impact on on culture, Back to the Future, hasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it's influenced me a lot because I identified with Marty quite a bit. Like, I love rock music, I love, all the kind of stuff. So me and him are very similar, like, as people, like, in our kind of attitude and our kind of, like, we want to get stuff done. We have dreams, we do stuff. I'm a little bit more focused than Marty is, when it comes to stuff. Like, so Marty will, like, sometimes make mistakes because he kind of like will think emotionally first, like especially that bit when he races against needles and stuff like that. I would be a little bit more reserved. I do like to put my foot down every now and then, when like I get the chance, or throttle up on my bike, but I wouldn't do anything too stupid, like drag someone like that, and
now do you think the film has had to have like a few reshoots? Like, do you remember that scene with George McFly where he's talking about the scenario to make him popular or make him win over Lorraine?
Yeah, I feel that a lot of that's been picked up because they had to redo it with Eric Schultz's original version. So, a lot of the kind of like the bit when he's doing the laundry, and he's talking to Marty feels like a pickup. It just always felt like a pickup to me. Like even before being like a kid, I felt like it was a padded scene, but it's not bad. It doesn't do anything to detract from the film, Yeah, it's just really good. Like the whole setup, the alleyway setup. When you're the courthouse setup when they're setting up the
let's
time
call
machine.
it the storm.
Yeah, like the storm square scene, the courthouse bit. Basically the clock tower scene is really well set up. Like the set, and then Marty's going. Marty's wearing his zoot suit. For
the thing is, it's
night.
A very smart film, and if you think about it, the way they show it, because everything happens in the square.
Yeah, so that's really economical everything. And very creative because you've spent your total budget redressing the set twice only. So you have 1989 and you've shot all your 1989 scenes, so you've probably shot those first. Then you've done the 1950 scenes, or you've done it the other way around, and it's really good. Like the film just
is a good.
Sometimes you make a film and you don't know what you have. You're putting it together and you don't know that this is going to be this massive magical movie that just resonates with so many people because of the way the heroes, like things come together so well. Like Christopher Lloyd and Micheal J. Fox's acting is so amazing. They're kind of like their relationship is so great. It resonates through you in a certain way. It's just the kind of like the movie magic, and that's why I love filmmaking. And as a filmmaker, I try to capture that tingle down the back of your spine when you're sitting in the cinema. I'm sure people felt that. I felt that the first time I saw Aladdin. Like Aladdin's one of the films that I saw in the cinema for the first time. This is the Disney version. So basically, after that, the Disney animated version. So I was so hooked on movies and different things that I went back and I saw a whole bunch of stuff, because a lot of my film experiences and that tingle I was getting when I was watching like VHS versions of movies. Like my dad had like a massive collection of films that he had like bought and recorded off the TV, and he liked doing that. He liked recording like Channel 4 Christmas specials and stuff. Like Channel 4 and BBC had like all these Bond specials, and he would do it that way. My mum loved doing it too. So that kind of fondness for film, videos, understanding all the kind of video stuff, the technology. I was really hooked with, like mastering the VHS, mastering the DVD players. I was always, like when it came to technology, anything AV based, I loved it. So I naturally gelled towards like photography and film because of this. So this film is like, has been very influential on that. Very influential in our careers as filmmakers. It's a really nice film, and it captures that that nice American spirit and that kind of rock and roll era.
Slightly purer time.
Yeah, it felt this is like the post. This is sort of like the baby boomer kind of time where it's post war. So the world was recovering and everybody was trying to live their lives after so much devastation and stuff. So yeah, there was a lot more people being kind of like connecting and doing the hibbity dibbity and having kids and stuff. So
yeah, because they used to have more like drive-in cinemas, drive-throughs, and
They had massive cars as well.
massive cars. Yeah, the cars were like
Cars are
totally
like
different at that
cars are
time.
like Bentleys. Like, you know, a Bentley Continental this day is like, you know, what is that, like a 300k or more car,
Well,
right?
American car production was
Yeah.
like at that time was booming as well because they were had such a good steel and metal industry.
Yeah.
America.
In the 80s, everything went Japanese. So this is like
Yeah,
when
it
the
got
Japanese
cheaper because of the oil crisis.
yeah, so basically the Japanese, you know, like the thunder from them, you know, like Toyota, Honda, like they just came in with these amazing cars, which were like really reliable and very, very, very cost effective, you know, compared to the American brands. So you wanted to stick American, you know, because you wanted to be like kind of like, you know, loyal to like an American brand, but then it just was really good what was happening, you know, worldwide, the innovation. Like, so stuff was coming from all over the world that was costing less. And this started that kind of trade, you know, that massive stuff. So like companies like Sony, you know, they started cementing themselves in the American market as like major players and, you know, like things like that. And it's really cool to see all these companies thriving still. You know, they're still innovating, like Sony, you know, Honda, Toyota. They're doing really great stuff with their cars and bikes and stuff. I've always loved Honda bikes, you know, and other kinds of brands like Suzuki, Kawasaki, Yamaha. They all make killer bikes, and you know, the H2 is an amazing engineered bike. I'm gonna probably do a house of rep on that one day when I start reviewing bikes and things, you know, and stuff later on down the
Now,
line.
how do you feel about the scene when George stands up to his bully?
I really like that scene because when I was younger, I had a lot of bullies who tried to pick on me and stuff. And then, like, you know, I know what it feels like to have someone treat you like shit and you've done nothing wrong. And I really felt bad about that. I used to think that there was something wrong with me, you know, and, you know, I was doing something wrong. But later on, when I grew up, I realized that the people are dicks. You know, they have something inside them that's insidious or some kind of fault of their own, which makes them want to like get some power over someone, to try and pick on them and bully them and stuff. So I could understand where George came from. Like, George was very reserved and into his books and things, and here comes Biff, who just, you know, he's got something in his past, like with his grandma and stuff, that makes him kind of like push his kind of anger and rage onto other people. You know, he wants to be in control. He wants to be recognized as someone. Yeah. When I was younger, I always kind of like felt angry and kind of like upset about the way Biff tries to manhandle Lorraine. You know, the scene where he kind of is like putting moves on her and kind of assaulting her. It's almost bordering on kind of sexual assault. You know, so I always found it uncomfortable. In the uncut version, it's a lot longer. So in the original Channel 4 version, he goes, you know, get out of here. This ain't no peep show. In the other version, he says, gonna beat it, man, you know, like, we're gonna do some stuff. And then he says, get out of here, you know, this ain't no peep show. So it's a lot longer. And then also, the racist...
undertone.
You know, the racist... what do they call it? The slur that 3D uses. He calls basically the boys... you know, the band. I forgot the name of the band. But basically, he calls Marvin Berry and his group, you know, like spooks. So I didn't understand that as a kid, you know. And then he said, I don't want to become like a reefer head or something. So he was talking about weed and you know, like marijuana and stuff that I didn't know about, you know, like when I was a kid. So I couldn't understand that stuff. But now watching it again as an adult,
has a different meaning.
Yeah, it has a different meaning in the uncut version. So I can see why there's still a little bit of you know, racial tension there and stuff. So nothing is perfect in that world. There's still things. The bit here, the kind of face that you know, the bit where George discovers that Biff is the one who's actually, like, you know, manhandling and like being very rough with Lorraine. He builds a lot of confidence. He finds it wrong. I could see it in his eyes. So Crispin does a great delivery, you know, where he's like, look, this is wrong. I always remember that. And then when he goes for the punch, you know, you really at that moment in time feel that, you know, come on, he's got to do something. He's got to get good. But the problem is that, you know, George has always thought that he's weak. You know, like he's always had like, you know, like he's never had the confidence to basically power over Biff. When Biff throws, Lea Thompson's Lorraine down, she falls on her butt, and hurts herself, and he's laughing, it really makes him angry and gives him power. And because he cares about her a lot, like he's always had a crush on her. So that's a really wicked moment, where he knocks his bully out. And I love that.
It's a good edit as
well. Yeah, it's a good edit because it's a double cut. So when the punch happens, the punch is delivered and then the spin happens and then they've cut it twice to add impact. And then he slides down. They've kind of retconned it a little bit in the second film, so the angle changes because they have to obviously cover Crispin Glover's absence because, do they did a kind of reshoot, but Crispin Glover wasn't there. So they had to do it a little bit differently. But the lighting, the nuances, Lea and him, the way they look at each other is really cool. And she feels, and just basically everything gets set up and, the history's starting to correct itself based on that. Like, so through his own, he was trying hard to kind of fix the timeline, but the timeline was kind of correcting itself. So that was kind of cool. And then, the Johnny Be Good bit, I want to talk about that. Yeah. That bit's really cool. Like, that bit is really kind of very influential to me because I saw, a really cool guitar bit, and this is before I picked up a guitar, so it was very, very, very influential to me, this film. Like, that bit is so cool. I feel that he goes a bit too much. He goes too crazy. I would definitely not start tapping or going, really crazy like that if I had to do stuff. I'd probably play the Johnny Be Good tune and then not mess it up like that. But I think that was on purpose to show that Marty just goes a little bit overboard sometimes, feeling like, he wants to kind of overachieve. So basically, when it comes to playing, he's never had his chance to actually be on stage. So he's a little bit kind of like stiff and kind of like sort of out of it because he's kind of fading from the timeline. So that fade effect is really interesting too, like the rotoscoping that they did. It's like classic rotoscoping. Somebody's put
a hand in his face.
Yeah. It looks like the alignment of this hand and the thing just looks a bit kind of weird. Also that that redhead guy, the guy who was like kicking him before, kind of randomly comes back and starts grabbing Lorraine and butting in, and
the
then
random goo.
Yeah, and then George kind of walks away, and then he's like, "Excuse me," and he pushes him with like the force of Superman sign, so everything's really cool because it like Marty gets re-energized, and Earth Angel, the way Marvin Berry's like deliverance of the final verse there is so resonating. I will always, when I see the scene, if I see it without sound, like if it's just playing on the TV and my mom's watching it, I will remember exactly the tonality and the deliverance of his voice. When he does the Earth Angel, please be mine, that bit, it's just so powerful, and that's a really wicked rendition of that song. If you hear the original version, it's very similar, but the movie version is subtly different. I'm so used to the movie version. You can listen to the original version of the band's song on YouTube. So basically it's out there and you can have a listen to it. I like his guitar. It's one of those old Gibson jazz guitars, really expensive nowadays. It's about $4,000. It's a really, really nice guitar. It's got really good action, so you can rock on it, but it's mostly made for like jazz chords. They sound very bright. So the guitar's a very bright guitar. It's not like one for like heavy chugging and stuff. So he's really mashing up that guitar when he starts playing, but he really kills it. The fingering, like the way Michael like learnt the fingering and the stuff, is really cool. And the way the guys keep the actual tempo is really interesting because he goes, "Hey guys, we're going to be riffing in E, watching for the changes and try and keep up." I never understood any of that until I started playing. It took me a while to understand, like keys. I'm still not perfect at
timing
it. Like,
tempo,
like when
rhythm.
people say that this is E Phigrian or Lodian scale, I'm like, what the hell are they talking about, man? I just play what I want to play. Like sometimes I'll just jam within the kind of pentatonic kind of like scale and I'll start thinking up riffs and sounds and stuff, but of course you've got to keep progressing your playing and try to learn like more scales and more techniques so that it just broadens you musically. But the bit where he goes kind of crazy and everyone kind of like starts looking at him after the rock and roll bit when everyone's kind of dancing with rock and roll. It's so funny because like when I was young, I just used to laugh at it. I thought he's just being silly. When I get older, I kind of cringe at it a little bit because I find it embarrassing. So like because even as a guitarist, I don't think I'd ever do that. I don't think I'd go overboard. I mean, obviously I'd headbang like crazy, like in rock and metal and stuff. But when it comes to like if I'm playing something like that, like, like a jazz kind of tune, or something like, old school rock and roll, but, it is what it is. Like, the film, that was designed intentionally to be like that, to show that Marty just takes it a little too far, and stuff. The continuity of them calling their kid Marty is a bit funny, though. That they, there's a bit of, like, suspension of disbelief a bit, where you have to kind of go, like, they don't realize that Marty is the kid that they saw. Now, if I was the director, I would have added like their parents don't really acknowledge it, but then there's a bit where he hands him maybe the keys to the T.O.R. and he's like, listen, son, I'm always here for you. I love you a lot, but just like you were there for me. And he's like, Dad, what do you mean? He's like, you know what I mean. You know what I mean?
Or you could have had, like, you remind me of a guy I used to know when I was younger.
Yeah.
And his name was Marty.
That's why you're named after him. Yeah. And then you could have had a funny joke because you look totally like him.
Because there's lots of people who are inspired by other people to
George
call
could say
their family members this name or that name.
Yeah, like George could say that, like, shit, man, he looks proper like Marty. Did like Lorraine shack up with Marty? Like, is he my kid? Like, he could have said that. Like, the guy don't look nothing like me, Yeah, and the bit where Doc's like, damn, with his watches. I love all those things. Damn that kid. And one of my favorite bits is when he goes all the way down the road, and the music lines up, and the final scene where the timing is there, where the cable gets dislodged, it falls because of the lightning strike and all the stuff. Oh man, that bit is just so golden. That the music by Alan Silvestri, the overture of the Back to the Future theme, it's just so wicked. And then the bit when he tries to warn Doc, but then Doc finds a letter.
Yeah.
That bit is really kind of made me sad as a kid. Like Doc's not going to read it and he's not going to survive. And then Doc's kind of fumbling around on the clock tower ledge. He actually breaks it. They keep the continuity of that is brilliant. And then all the kind of set design, the kind of cougary panthers that kind of shadow the clock. They're very well designed.
Now, there weren't many like time travel films like this at the time.
No. This kind of started like that trend of good time travel movies, and we've always had really like time travel is kind of like you can never really.
Bill and Ted was after this, right?
I think Bill and Ted was made after this. Yeah, I can't remember, or it was made at the same time because Bill and Ted had to can their kind of van. I think they were going to have, like, the Wild Stallion van was supposed to be like a time machine, like a Scooby-Doo kind of vehicle and stuff. So it's quite funny because the same thing with Back to the Future, because we talked about it earlier, about it was going to be some kind of fridge or some kind of giant ship, and then you have to put it on the back of a truck. So it's, like, really stupid. Like, this whole, it being a car that actually has to build up speed, it's one of the best things that they ever did.
Yeah.
That it has to hit a certain speed and then get powered. Yeah, that's right. The bit when the clock tower's like buzzing his head, like when it's banging its bell, and like knocking him out. That bit's so funny. Yeah, so it's just really cool. Like the whole bit, and also the bit where the car kind of like cuts out. That bit's quite funny too. And then he headbutts it. To start it. That bit made me laugh as a kid. This film always used to pump me up, made me want to drive. Because the way he kind of speeds down the road, I just thought, wow, that's so wicked. Like it feels like, there's so much speed. The photography there by the cinematographer and like camera team is just exemplary. I'd be so proud of them if, they were my crew. Like it's just beautifully shot.
Also, I think it's kind of funny why he only chooses like 2 minutes. Is it 2 minutes or 3 minutes earlier?
Yeah, that's strange. I would have gone a day earlier.
He says like he punches
it
into the time machine.
I don't think he wanted to make too many changes to the timeline because of what Doc ordered him to do.
Yeah.
But at least I would have gone an hour earlier.
Or like half an hour.
Yeah, but the only problem is that I know why. Because he would jump over himself and there'd be 2 of him.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So then, how would he? If he interacts with his past self,
so that's like with the law at the start.
Yeah, it would create a paradox.
Right.
Basically, he'd go and warn his earlier self, then his earlier self wouldn't go back in time. Then the other Marty would erase himself, or it would just be like this weird kind of...
That would be the dark ending.
Yeah, it would be a weird glitch where they mutually erase themselves or something, and then the universe imploded or something.
Yeah, there's a film where that happens, and I can't remember what film it is.
Time Cop.
Yeah.
Do you remember in Time Cop? He kicks the senator into himself.
He's like, no.
And he's like, ah! He becomes like some weird gooby thing. I love that movie. That's directed by Peter Berg, right? Not Peter Berg, sorry. Peter Hyam. Peter Hyam, yeah. Peter Berg's the director of Saturday Night Lights or whatever, and Battleship and stuff, and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, he's like an actor turned director. But Peter Hyam, and his son made the later Universal Soldier films, which are a bit hit and miss. But the original Roland Emmerich Universal Soldier films are very good. It was very good. So we'll talk about that too, because I love Van Damme's films. They're very cool, especially his early work. It's really nice. A few of his newer films haven't really hit the spot. They're kind of like, they could be better. But his earlier stuff like Bloodsport, Kickboxer, that whole era is amazing. Like the 80s had some amazing films. Yeah. So I just like all the shot placements, all the kind of close-ups, the reactionary shots, the way Christopher Lloyd delivers his physical acting. Marty looks so heroic there as he's building up speed, and the speedometer's cranking up, to 75, and he's building the speed up. Then we have the insert of the antenna, the determination by Doc, the lighting of the panels, the bit where, the DeLorean's accelerating right into the camera. Yeah, they've angled the camera. It's very well edited. It's very tight edit. The frame rate, everything, they've shot it at the right time. I also like the bit where Doc abseils down like the rope, and then basically gets it unlocked right when the flux capacitors starting to kind of gear up and it needs the charge. So basically the pre-time thing, when the ship starts glowing, the lightning strikes, travels down the thing, Doc gets electrocuted a little bit, the music crescendo's there, then the DeLorean goes back in time.
How come Doc... This is what I never understood when I saw the film, is how come Doc isn't dead?
From the electricity?
It's like an electric lightning bolt. You would die from that shit.
Yeah, it's like he was wearing...
Just goes like,
I don't know, he was wearing some very strong gloves, they were like the I don't know where he went. He probably went to like
insulated gloves.
Yeah, he bought some insulated gloves or something, or, that's why his hair, looks the way it is. It probably dissipated through his hair or something.
Yeah.
Maybe he's been electrocuted so much, he's used to it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Through all his experiments. But, his cry out at the end, and then like the happiness of, him going back in time.
Yeah.
And then going to 1989 where they run into...
the hobo.
Red, the hobo. That bit's funny because he crashes into the front of the Cineplex, that's all run down now and stuff, and you can see that some of the city's kind of deteriorated, and the businesses have kind of like sort of moved on, but the cars got frost again. That's the thing. So again, the continuity's there. So coming back to 1989. They got all these kind of like X-rated movie theaters now and stuff, and everything's got like, it's going like, come and see this like orgy going on, and like the Bank of America, like there's all these kind of like modern digital watches and stuff. So he knows he's back. But the bit that's quite funny is the Libyans drive past him, and then he's like runs out of fuel, so he can't even like hail a taxi or anything to catch up to them. So he's late, even with the 5 minutes.
That's kind of funny because then obviously in the previous time, the Libyans would have passed no one.
Yeah. Or they did, and they didn't know. So it could have been because he doesn't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, like they don't know. He didn't know that they knew him, but he really bolts it. Like he goes full tilt to try and get there in time, and he's like worn out by the time. I mean, like I've like I know what LA's like. You get what I mean? Like the roads are big. It's not a short distance to run that long. You need some vehicles to get around there. Like taking the bus in like California is like not nearly as good as like as practical as like taking a car.
But to Marty, it feels like it was only yesterday that he came back.
Yeah.
Like
and it's really it's a wicked moment when he sees himself.
Yeah.
I love that. Doc's reaction is different though. The way he falls.
Oh yeah.
So Doc falls face first. He doesn't do that little jiggle, like with his one foot in the air.
That's right.
So it changes, so the angle's a bit different. Then Marty kind of gets scared and jumps down the hill and kind of like buckles a little.
Do you think they shot both sequences at the same time, like one wide angle and one close-up angle.
Yeah, I think all the kind of wide angles were established when probably they were with Eric. I like how Doc survives. That's a really cool bit because he read the letter. So that's one of my favorite bits. So he had a bulletproof vest, and the bulletproof vest kind of saved him. It's a weird looking kind of Kevlar though, the bulletproof vest that he has.
Like the old version.
Yeah, because it looks like the metal looks like it's kind of, the bullets look like they have exploded onto the actual Kevlar. But in most real Kevlar kind of situations, don't they absorb the bullet
and then kind of pad the bullet?
Yeah, or something. Like I'm not a real expert on Kevlar and like how it works, but it looks a bit different in the movie. And it's nice that he actually, you know, didn't throw the letter away and then he wrote it. It's a very chill end, you know, where he's like, okay, he drops Marty off, Marty and him are reunited, you know, they've kind of, it's all great, he saved him. Then, you know, when he wakes up, he realizes that the timeline has changed for the better. He's got a better house. The house has better decor. You know, he's gone from struggling kind of like working wealthy class to kind of like middle class, or I would say almost upper middle class. You know, they've got a piano. You know, his brother works, his sister works. You know, they're making good money. You know, they've got, you know, better clothes. The breakfast spread is better. They got croissants. They've got grapefruits. You know, I was about to say grapefruits. Grapefruits, but like grapefruits and other kinds of great things. You know, is it Matt McClure? You know, like he's amazing
Jimmy
in it.
Olsen.
Like he's a classic Jimmy.
Yeah,
Jimmy, so to see him as like Thing's brother is really good, and the parents are great too. When they come back, they've got like this energy about them, you know, that they've been going like they've been keeping in shape. They, you know, they probably go gym in the morning because they look like they're returning from like cricket or some like morning shopping
what do you
or
think
something.
of like old Biff's look?
Yeah, old Biff makes you laugh. I love old Biff where he's like, "Hey Biff, you know, we want to put that second coat." Like he's got like basically he never applied himself. He was like probably like the real slacker, like you know, like forgotten the principal's name. Strickland. So Strickland always said he was a slacker, right? And then he ended up kind of being a slacker. But there's nothing wrong with being like, I'm not gonna say that being an auto detailing expert is a bad job. I mean, he was able to turn his life around and have a job, but basically he was never able to kind of like apply himself as much as something like George. George became an author because he never gave up on himself. Whereas Biff probably kind of defaulted to something that he was good at with his like with his skill. Like his skill set was what he could do. And, you know, him getting reunited with Jennifer is great. He's got the car now, so the car didn't get smashed. You know, it's really cool. It's a much happier ending with a better timeline. The bit where Doc comes is wicked.
Yeah.
And, you know, like, and I'm a little bit torn about which version I like better because they had to reshoot it again for the second film when they got Elizabeth Shue to come on board.
Yeah.
So basically, like, I like the original version, and, you know, like the acting the first time round when he's talking to Marty, he's like, "Gotta come back with me," and stuff. Like, actually, Michael J. Fox's hair has gotten a lot longer, and he grew up a little bit more. So physically, he looks a little different by the time the second film comes. He's like a little less skinnier, and you know, I love Mr. Fusion as well. Yeah, I just want to talk about that, like how you could just put some bananas and like get some grapefruit juice.
We're still not quite there yet, where we can recycle. Like,
I just wish we could have a Mr. Fusion.
Renewable fuels.
Yeah, I think it's made by Yamaha. I think it's got Yamaha's logo on it.
Okay,
like, so Mr. Fusion is made by Yamaha. It's like some sort of advanced kind of generator or recycler. He basically went to the future and changed all of the shortcomings that the DeLorean had.
And so I think this is the first time you kind of see like an early version of it flying.
That bit's amazing. I still love it to this day. Like the rear plate, you know, like the bit where it energizes and then the fins become jets, and he's got that really kind of shining sunglasses. Yeah. It's such a cool moment because it's a practical model, but because the shot is so brief, they've put a lot of attention to detail on it, and the film ends perfectly with the ship coming towards us. Sorry, not the ship, the car coming towards us, and then kind of leaping into time. So it's almost like a quantum leap. Yeah. Like the other great series, you know. So it's really cool. Now it doesn't need that much energy to build up speed, you know, like when it goes back in time. So by going in the air, it's reaching 88 miles an hour very quickly.
That's right.
Yeah, But pretty much that kind of wraps up our podcast on the film.
What rating would you give the film, bro?
Me, I can only see this through kind of rose-tinted glasses, yeah. But to give it as much of a realistic review as I can, I'd give it a very strong 5 for me, like all the time, because the film is so good. It might lose a star because of its kind of like some of its age-based kind of like jokes and references, so it might go down to a 4.5 or even a 4. But because I love it so much from my childhood, I'm gonna, and it's my show, I can just be as biased as I want, you know. Give it 5. So what would you give it?
I would definitely give it a 4 overall. I think it's a well-rounded film. It's a lovely family film to watch.
Yeah.
I think it's a good coming-of-age film as well, because obviously Marty goes through this lovely progression throughout the entire trilogy as a character. It's a very good film directed by Robert Zemeckis, and one of his best films of all time, really.
Yeah, he's never really been able to top that, you know, in my personal opinion. Like, the Back to the Future franchise is amazing. He did a few other movies that are not bad. He recently directed The Witches, but that was very hit and miss.
Okay.
You know, so...
So overall, we give it a 4.
Yeah. I would say because you gave it a 4, I gave it a 5. It's actually a 4.5. You know, 4.5.
Yeah.
So it's aggregated to 4.5. So yeah, very high score from Back to the Future, you know, on the House of R.E.P. I would expect nothing less from this classic. It really sits up there as a highly recommended movie. You should watch the entire trilogy, and when you get a chance, you should own it in some way or another if you don't already own it. And I highly recommend that you consider purchasing the new box set that's come out. It's a really good heritage film for any cinephile to have in their collection. Yeah, so I want to thank Z for joining me on this podcast, and I want to thank you all for listening, and please share, and, you know, just keep enjoying the show. We're going to keep banging out season 1, and this is episode 30. This was Back to the Future's movie review from the House of R.E.P. We'll see you in the next one.